Hey guys, let's look at our new story that we're going to look at this week. Now this story is going to be a little bit different just because usually we work on a story for almost 2 weeks, but we only have 1 week until fall break, so we will only work on this story for just 1 week, okay? So it's kind of a short story and we'll be able to do some things with it. But the name of our story is going to be Families Working Together. That's going to be our story this week. Alright, and our story is a non-fiction story. Now, I know the very first story we read, Big Red Lollipop, it was a realistic fiction story. And then last week we read Help, and it was a fantasy story. But this story is going to be non-fiction. So what is non-fiction? What is non-fiction? Good. Non-fiction is kind of the opposite of the other 2 stories we've read. Realistic fiction stories and fantasy stories are made-up stories. They're not real. They're made up. But a non-fiction story means that it's not made up. It tells you true things. All of it is real, and it usually is telling you about some true things. So I'm going to just stop this for just a second so you can see me. Here we go. There we go. Well, maybe there it goes. Okay, so it tells you true things, real things. So I've got a pile of books here that we're going to look at, and we're going to see if we can decide if it would be realistic fiction, fantasy, or non-fiction, which is the new kind of story, which is a true story not made up. For example, this one right here, Lions. Lions would be non-fiction. It's non-fiction because it's real. You can kind of look, it's got real photographs, and it tells you true things about lions. So Lions is a non-fiction story, just like the story that we're going to read this week. What about this Berenstain Bears book, Trick or Treat? Do you think that would be non-fiction? Does it look like it's telling true stuff? No. This is actually, do you think it'd be realistic fiction or fantasy? Those bears are wearing clothes and going trick-or-treating. Yeah, Berenstain Bears would be a fantasy story. It's totally made up, could never be real because bears don't wear clothes and go trick-or-treating. No, they don't. Alright, what is in Washington, D.C.? Looks like it's got real pictures in it. And it looks like it's telling true things about Washington, D.C. What kind of story would this be? Good. This one is going to be non-fiction, just like Lions. They're both non-fiction because they tell true things. Non-fiction means true. It means they're not made up. And that's what these 2 are. They're true, and they're going to tell you true things. What about Roar of a Snore? Have you ever read this book? It's about this boy who hears snoring, and he goes around to all of his family members trying to figure out who's snoring, and it ends up being the little kitten that's in the barn at the end of the story. Yeah, see? He's found his little kitten in the barn, and it's snoring. It's the one that was snoring. Do you think this would be non-fiction? Is it true? No. Non-fiction stories usually have, if they're true and real, they're going to have real photographs. Like these, that's real pictures, real photographs. This is a drawing. Somebody drew it. It's not a real photograph. So this is not non-fiction. It's not true. But do you think it could be fantasy or realistic fiction? Could a cat be snoring and the little boy try to go around and see who's snoring? Yeah, cats do snore sometimes. My dog snores all the time. She sleeps right beside me and I'm all the time thinking it's my husband and it's the dog. So yeah, that could be a true story. So it's a realistic fiction. That means it's made up, but it could be real. So that's realistic fiction. It needs to go in a different pile. What about Trick or Treat, Smell My Feet? I don't know why I've got so many Halloween books. I don't know, I just grabbed them. Trick or Treat, Smell My Feet. This is Gilbert. I think he's a hedgehog. It looks like he's kind of like a hedgehog, doesn't it? It looks like he's a hedgehog. That's Gilbert. What do you think? Is this going to be nonfiction? Is it going to be true? No. Those animals are wearing clothes and they're going trick-or-treating. They look like they're at school. They're all in there changing their costumes. It looks like at school. So, what do you think? It's not nonfiction. Is it fantasy or realistic fiction? Yeah, this one would be not realistic fiction. Animals don't wear clothes. No, this one's fantasy again because it's so crazy and made up it could never happen. So this one's a fantasy story just like Help last week. All right, my last one, trucks. That looks like a real picture of a truck. Oh yeah, when I look through, oh, look at that big truck. Do you think this one's going to be nonfiction? You're right. This one is also nonfiction, just like Lions and What's in Washington, D.C. They have real pictures, and they're true. They're telling you true stuff, not made up stuff, true stuff about trucks or lions or about Washington, D.C. Okay? So that's what makes something a nonfiction story if it's true. And this is the first nonfiction story we have read this year. So let's go ahead and read it. It's called Families Working Together. I think that's what it was called. Let me go in and find it. Yes, Families Working Together. So if you want to pause the video and go get your reading book, it would be a great idea because you can follow along while I read it, okay? It looks like it starts on page 60. So go get your reading book and you can follow along. Pause the video. Okay. Hopefully you've got your reading book. You've got page 60. Let's get started. Families working together. How does a family farm work? It's 3:45 a.m. on Tuesday. 3:45 a.m. is like really early in the morning. Mary Gelder is ready for work. She and her mom drive many miles from their farm in Michigan to Chicago. They sell fruits and vegetables at a farmer's market. Customers visit their farm and their farm stand to buy fresh food. I love seeing who will eat the food my family works hard to grow, Mary says. After a long day, the Gelders return home. They do it all again on Saturday. But their work does not stop there. Each day, they do many chores. The family plants, waters, and picks fruits and vegetables. One of Mary's jobs is to care for the chickens. Her brothers repair trucks and tractors. They check farm tools such as shovels and drills. Mary's mom, Renee, takes care of money and manages the workers in Chicago, Illinois. When the Gelders choose what to plant, they look at demand. In the summer, people want strawberries, so the family plants a lot of them. Sometimes they sell less than they have. The Gelders turn the extra fruit into jam. I love strawberries, Mary says. It's great to have jam in the winter when there's no supply of fresh strawberries. And when you see a nonfiction story, you do have to read all parts of it. Not just this part looks like the story, but this is part of it too, so you need to make sure you're reading it too. Producing and consuming. Some people produce items that people buy. People who buy items are called consumers. Here's a look at some items that are produced and who consumes them. So bicycles are produced, that means they're made. Kids and athletes are the ones who consume them. They're the ones that buy them. Books, well, teachers and students and readers are the ones who buy them. Food is also produced or made, and people and animals, of course, buy it. Animals don't, I don't guess. Cars are produced, and of course, people who drive them are the ones who consume them. So that's producers and consumers. Just like up here in the story where it talked about Mary's family producing strawberries and who buys them, those would be the consumers. Running a farm costs money, so the Gelders try to save. Some time ago, they bought an outdoor wood stove, and they burn the farm's old trees for heat. The heat warms their home and barn. It helped the family spend less during the cold months. We help each other, and we help the environment, Renee says. I'm really proud of my family and our farm. And you even have to read, if you see some words under a picture, you have to read those too, okay? So the Gelder family farm produces apples and other fruits. And people buy jam and fresh food from the Gelder's family farm stand. All right, I told you it was a very short story. That's the end of it. The next part is something different, a different story. So it was a very short story, wasn't it? And it was called Families Working Together. You need to make sure that you are reading that story at home each evening with your parents or with their older brother or sister or somebody, okay? Make sure you're reading it so that when we get ready to the test, you remember it, okay? Okay. All right, before we go on from this video, what are some ways that her family worked together? Sometimes does your family work together to do things? Well, yeah, I bet they do. My family works together. We were trying to work on getting the woods cleaned out around my house, get like all the old trees out of it and stuff. So yeah, my kids were hauling little twigs and stuff, and we built a big fire to burn all the twigs and stuff. Yeah, I bet you help your parents sometimes, don't you? Yeah, I bet you do, or I hope you do. Your parents need help sometimes. Yeah. So you guys work together too. What were some things in the story that Mary helped her family do? Yes. She helped them. I remember it said her brothers worked on the tractors. Like when the tractors break down, her brothers can fix them. I remember that. Mary would help, like I think it said she helps the planting. I'm pretty sure that's what it said. That Mary can help when they're planting stuff. Like she'll dig the holes maybe and help water it, I bet, when it needs to be watered. So good. All right, very good on this. I know you noticed the vocabulary words in the story, and our next lesson is going to be finding the vocabulary words and talking about them, okay? All right, don't forget to read this story tonight.